In this video, we're going to show you to install brake pads and rotors on your Nissan Frontier located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, go ahead, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Get to remove the wheel and set it aside. I want to go ahead and remove our brake caliper. We have two 14mm bolts here. We want to go ahead and loosen and remove these. I'm going to start with the bottom one. Go ahead and get that top one. Now I want to go ahead and separate the brake caliper from the caliper bracket itself. So I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver, go between the caliper bracket and the caliper, and just try and move this out. Just gently work this back and forth between the brake rotor and the caliper bracket. Now we have a caliper hanging tool here. You want to make sure when you remove this here, you can hang this caliper. You don't want the caliper to drop on this flex hose here. You can damage that. So go ahead and use the hanging tool, and then you can hook it up on the upper control arm or up on the frame somewhere to support this up and out of the way. Remove your brake caliper bracket by loosening the two 19mm bolts here. You can use an impact gun, or you can use your ratchet and socket. Now we got our lower bolt out with our impact gun, but for some reason the upper one was a little bit tighter, so we're going to switch over to our breaker bar here. Needs a little more leverage. Now with that loose, we're going to switch back to our impact gun and zip that off. Be sure to hold the caliper bracket when you remove this bolt, otherwise this is going to drop and it could hit you in the foot. Slide this off. Probably going to come off with your brake pads. Simply slide the pads out of the shims. Set those aside for now. Grab that brake rotor, slide that off and set that aside. I'm going to go ahead and set your rotor in place. Now on these cross-drilled slotted rotors, this particular vehicle, these slots need to be up in a scooping fashion here. Do not put it the other way where they are going the sweeping back. That would be the wrong direction. These are directional. If you have a solid rotor where you don't have these cross-drilled slots here, you want to go ahead and make sure that you use a spray solvent to clean off any oils are on there, and then towel dry them and then put them on. Now you can see as I press this on and the rotor flops back, go ahead and throw a lug nut on the bottom. This will keep that rotor from flopping off, makes it easier to put the caliper and bracket on. Using a 17mm socket, we want to go ahead, loosen and remove our sliders here. Now these are not threaded in. These should normally pivot inside here, but both of us are frozen. So we're going to go ahead and try and loosen them. Like so, and we want to pull them out. Now as these come out, they're going to come out with the rubber boot, or they may not. Maybe the boot will stay on the bracket itself. They just kind of pop on like so. I'm going to go ahead and do the same over here. Now our sliders here were pretty rusted. All kinds of debris in there. We are going to go ahead and pop these boots off. And what you want to do is check these boots. You're going to stretch them out and kind of roll them. You're going to look for any tears or splits in them. that is going to be probably the main reason why you would get water or moisture inside here. I'm just emptying out the rust and debris in here. Both boots are the same, so inspect this one as well. Next thing we want to do is use our small bore brush and clean out these ports. Let's go ahead and clean out the 2 holes here. We have our bore brush. Let's go ahead and run this down. And what our goal is to get any rust and debris out of these ports. All right, so go ahead. And we're now going to spray a little bit of solvent inside here. Do the same thing on this one. Now I want to take a look at our slider pins here. Now these are heavily rusted. As a matter of fact, there was a rubber sleeve on this one here at one point, and that has since deteriorated and came apart. And this one here as well is exceptionally rusty here. Ideally, you need to replace these components before installing. So you want to make sure you have that rubber sleeve on this here. Remember which side it came out of as well. That plays a key role. Now for video purposes, we're simply going to clean this up here using our wire wheel. But you definitely need to replace these here when you're doing this job. And we cleaned up our pins here. Next step we want to do is take that brake caliper bracket and you want to slide or pop these sliders out. Pop that out. Use your wire brush or a flat file and clean that mating surface. I want to make sure that there's nothing impeding the mating of the new shim on here. If there is chunky rust on there, go ahead and use a flat file, clean all that up. And we're going to do the same to the other end as well. But what we're going to do is apply just a little bit of grease, thin coating. That's all you want. You don't want globs of grease on this here. Any excess grease, go ahead and wipe off. And take your new component, line that up, make sure that the spring is on the inboard side here. Push that down. Inspect all around, make sure that that is fully seated. Repeat this process for the other side. Now that we have our sliders on, go ahead and pop our rubber boot back into place. I want to put a little bit of grease on the slider pins themselves. Now you don't want to put big globs of it on there because you can actually cause this bolt to push back out, and you don't want to do that. You just want to lubricate this and then work that in. Now as you push this in, it should pop onto the rubber boot. It should stay seated right underneath the head of the bolt there, just like that. I'm going to go ahead and repeat for this back one here. Remember, just for video purposes here, this is supposed to have a rubber bushing on it. Ours is deteriorated. If yours is gone as well, replace the pins. Go ahead and get those bolts in there. You want to go ahead and make sure that they spin nice and free. In and out, nice and easy. Our caliper bracket is ready for installation. Take your caliper bracket, Line that up and go ahead and get your bolts installed. Now that we have our bolts started, go ahead and snug those down. Going to install your inboard pad. Press that in, make sure it's flush up against the brake rotor. I'm going to go ahead and install the outboard pad. Install your outboard pad, slide this in, get the top one started, and just kind of rotate that pad into place. Squeeze it in up against the rotor. Go ahead and take your spring clips here, and these go into the holes on the top here. We have two on the bottom. One clip, two holes, and pop that in like so. Go ahead and slide this over. We'll go ahead and install our bolts here. Once that's caught a couple threads, you can go ahead and release that and then get that bottom one lined up. And we'll go ahead and snug those down. Using a 14mm socket, go ahead and snug these down. Torque down the caliper bolts to 26 foot-pounds. Torque down the caliper bracket bolts to 88 foot-pounds. Good, take your wheel, line it up. Now if you have these center caps like this here, I'm going to go ahead and line this up. Ideally, you want to go ahead and get all of the lug nuts started by hand. And then once you have them all started, we'll go ahead and snug them down. Good, and torque down your lug nuts to 98 foot-pounds. I'm going to try and do this in a crisscross pattern.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.